Arvind Gupta. He's a senior scientist from DRDO. So we like to hear from him also. Welcome, sir, for joining. And now over to for her talk. Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you can share your screen. Alka, ma'am, are you there?
अच्छा यहाँ से करना था मैं वहाँ से कर yeah am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Okay, hello, sorry for the slight delay. I was just finding it, trying to find my way around here. So, a warm, good afternoon to all of you. I'll try and keep my presentation really brief. This is about rationalizing costs and strategies in the defense sector, which is, the weakest link in the defense sector, you can say. Let's start with the good news first. Way back in 1983, Mr. Norman Augustine, who has worked on both sides of the fence, on the government side as well as a defense contractor, came up with the final law of economic disarmament. He collated vast volumes of data, given his experience on both sides. And by way of his projection with that data, he showed that how, in the case of US at least, by the year 2054, the entire US defense budget would go into purchasing a single fighter aircraft. Kind of thing you're looking at in the defense sector, that while the costs are escalating, defense costs are escalating, the defense budgets are always under strain. Invariably, there are various factors, of course, for this kind of, increasing, forever escalating costs of, or exponential escalation of costs in the defense sector. But largely, it is because of the generational cost of technology. So the new generation of defense equipment, it has been shown, that is, your tanks, aircraft, submarines, whatever you name it, have shown increasing costs which are well above the consumer price indices on an annualized basis. This is a persistent feature across the countries, across nations, developed, underdeveloped, developing, whatever it is. But just about everybody is under a huge strain when it comes to the defense, defense costs. Now, why would it be? Why would it be? Why, while technology, the cost of technology, particularly say the electronics industry, has been actually coming down, but not so in the defense sector? That is because of there's only one real explanation, that is the nature of the beast itself. The defense sector is such, invariably there are few suppliers, few buyers, asymmetrical information, secrecy, lack of transparency, and to top it all, the term we all are very familiar with these days because of the latest film which has come out, Ye Dil Mange More. It is known as the tournament nature of defense goods. Regression analysis has shown that the cost growth is entirely explained by the increase in performance parameters demanded by the defense. It's also, once again, I'm quoting Norman Augustine, who's called it the law of 90% and 10%. That surprisingly, 90% of the cost is coming from 10% of the parameters, or perhaps even less, if you ask me, having seen a lot of defense procurement closely, actually even less than 10% of the performance parameters. And the rest of the 90% of a platform is actually just maybe 10% of the cost, really. So, So this is known as the intergenerational cost growth, which is the biggest challenge. Now, there are best practices across the world. As I said, everybody in the world is trying to deal with this issue. It's the weakest link. You have the UK, United Kingdom has something known as a cost assurance and analysis service within their Ministry of Defense, which goes into the costing of the various defense equipment and other analysis and whatever assurance. USA has a counterpart known as CAPE, Director of Cost Assessment and Program Evaluation, and similarly all developed countries. And we also have our own cost accountants sitting inside the Ministry of Defense. So there's everybody is looking at defense costs and trying to rationalize. But I mean, when we talk of rationalization of costs, what is it that we really want? But in spite of all the best efforts, just about everywhere, there are continued cost overruns and delays when it comes to defense procurement, defense platforms, anything which has to do with defense. It just doesn't seem to happen on time. And invariably, if any country, and I mean, this is not just India, not just RFL, but just about everywhere, they had thought they would buy 12 platforms of something, they end up buying only 6 because ultimately there's a budget only of 6 available, or by the time they manage to complete their program or that particular platform, the technology has already changed on something or the other. So this is an endless cycle. So no doubt, while we have all these various organizations or internal checks and balances that we keep trying to create, CAS and CAPE and whatever, Defense Acquisition Council, and call them by any name. But ultimately, management systems are unlikely to reduce costs because there is an inherent perverse incentive within the defense sector to encourage project optimism bias and lack of responsibility for managing costs. It's inherent just about everywhere because for a well-known reason, defense sector falls squarely within the government sector, and government sector itself invariably, when it comes to responsibility and accountability for managing costs and things like that, has never been its strength. So what is it when I would prefer to use the term affordability in the case of the defense sector rather than rationalizing costs. There's no way we can rationalize costs really. So how do you make it affordable? What do I mean by affordability? So affordability actually refers to, I'll give you a long definition. Each word is very important, but then we'll try to break it up later on and figure it out. It's a balance of systems performance, cost and schedule constraints over the system life, while satisfying mission needs in concert with strategic investment and organizational needs. Yeah, it's a long sentence, and the words to be picked up are balance, systems performance, vis-a-vis cost schedule constraints and its life cycle, while meeting the mission requirements, the defense requirements, in concert with strategic investment and organizational needs. So yeah, there's a whole ground out there to be covered. And that, in a sense, is really the way out. And by this, of course, the moment you talk of something like this, such an evolved definition also, you're again looking at a whole range of experiments which have happened, whole range of terminology which will be thrown at you. I mean, Professor Sood had while dealing with his paper, there was a whole lot of acronyms thrown in. But those acronyms are nothing compared to the kind of acronyms which the defense sector loves using. It's just full of it. So you'll have CBIP, that's capability-based integrated procurement, and all sorts of you can just go on and on. I can't tell you. It's sometimes we have to keep our dictionary ready to understand what they're saying. But yes, while there's a huge management change required, what really is required can be actually brought down to something very, very simple at the same time. And that is your way out as well. Defense can no longer, like war, I mean, what is defense today? There is war all around us. When you can weaponize just about everything that you live with, everything that you take for granted. I mean, weaponize including even your microwave. Yeah, if somebody wants, I get, as soon as we are on to OTT and whatever TOT, anything can be weaponized. So when you are looking at a scenario like that, then in any case, defense by itself cannot be seen in some kind of an isolation. The defense sector or security cannot be seen in an isolation. So today, technology is being held back by the government sector, really. So you already have your air taxis, drone taxis. The technology is there, but governments will not allow it to be introduced. And that it's been there for the last many years now. So similarly, just about everywhere, the technology is overtaking government, it's overtaking security, it's overtaking the security demands. Now, unless we can really rethink the whole process, neither is defense going to be ever defense costs or equipment be rationalized, nor can defense even be provided. Ultimately, even as was Professor Sood kept saying, you're as weak as your weakest link. That's exactly where it is. We are as weak as our weakest link everywhere. So you have a concept now of the whole of government approach, which now has to be expanded to a whole of nation approach. There's a whole concept of net assessment which you have to carry out. Know thy enemy, know thyself. What is our strength? What is our weaknesses? What is the capability of? Because ultimately defense is all relative. So I have a technology, but if my neighbor or my enemy has a technology which is even slightly superior or slightly better, then is no use. Everything is almost always relational. So you have to have a persistent situational awareness, integrated battle plans, all kinds of things that one can come up with. But ultimately, there is no way out of critical thinking. You have to have a concept of comprehensive national power, which will include everything, whether it's diplomacy, economic power, very important economic power, thought leadership, knowledge society, strategic thinking. But most important, it has to flow. Defense has to flow from a national strategy to a defense strategy and then a military strategy. In my view, the bottom line is that defense has to be rescued, the defense sector has to be rescued from itself. And that rescue will happen only by way of the civilian economy. Only the civilian economy, the civil sector can actually rescue the defense sector from itself. This involves a very important part, or if I were to put it more simply, the bottom line of affordability is linked to technological innovation, which is bound to happen more easily in the civilian sector than in the defense sector. Disruptive technology at all. I mean, there are lots of terms to be used, all sorts of things. And this, and for all this, there's a huge balancing in economic and political power political level that would be required. But the other thing is military industry transformation. So that's where you look at, you have to get out of that platform-centric obsession which the defense sector has always had, making these large platforms, whether it be